This is The Mint live on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance, and economics. I'm Eben Mabunda. Let's get started. Coming up with The Mint, tourism is Zimbabwe's fourth largest sector after mining, agriculture, and manufacturing, and has the potential to play a significant role in Zimbabwe's economic recovery. In 2018, prior to the pandemic, the sector generated a record $1.3 billion in revenue. Zimbabwe has several national parks and natural attractions such as Hwange, Mana Pools, and Gonarejo National Parks, Victoria Falls, Lake Kariba, and the Great Zimbabwe National Monument. And of course, this sector is a key one for the continent of Africa. We look into intra-Africa trade where tourism is actually concerned. And of course, we speak to Farai Muvuti on The Mint. The Herald reports that Padenga Holdings posted a 31% increase in revenue to $75 million in the 6 months ended the June 30th, 2023, compared with the same period last year, buoyed by significant contributions from the Eureka gold mine. Now, according to Reuters, California-based Cobalt Metals, whose backers include billionaires Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, said it aims to start producing copper and cobalt at a project in Zambia within 10 years. Cobalt is spending about $150 million to accelerate its search for more deposits at the Migomba project located along the fabled African copper belt. CCTV Plus reports that Chinese tech giant Huawei unveiled a series of new products at a high-profile launch ceremony on Monday, the second anniversary of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou's return to China. Huawei showed off its latest products, including new smart glasses and watches, in a packed stadium, and expectations that its battered smartphone business is making a comeback. And the national average price for a gallon of gasoline across the U.S. rose to $3.88, hitting record high this year, according to data released by the American Automobile Association on September 18th, the CCTV Plus has reported. Now, The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere. You are watching The Mint on ZTN Prime. We're coming to you live from our ZTN studios in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, and I am Eben Mabunda. Now, tourism is Zimbabwe's fourth largest sector after mining, agriculture, and manufacturing, and has the potential to play a significant role in Zimbabwe's economic recovery. This is also a key sector for the continent of Africa, as it is estimated to be worth billions of US dollars spread across the length and the breadth of the continent of Africa. To discuss these and other issues, I am joined, of course, on set by a unique guest to discuss these issues. And of course, I'm talking about Farai Muvuti on The Mint. Hello, Farai, and welcome to The Mint.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. To get the ball rolling, let's talk about the significance of intra-Africa tourism by and large.
I think it has the opportunity to further scale our economic activity, in as far as if you consider the fact that a large number of those that travel to Africa tend to be Europeans, your Eastern Europeans as well, and your global South travelers predominantly from China, and your Singapore and Japan. What you want to be able to do as well is look at the Africa free trade and how tourism itself can be leveraged. And I think there's a huge growth potential there, considering that intra-Africa trade currently stands at about 8%. We can grow that fundamentally to create greater opportunities. And I think that is seen, but the lowest hanging fruit, I think, is Zimbabweans traveling within Zimbabwe itself, Zimbabweans traveling within the region itself, growing. A good template of that is Eswatini, for instance, who about 60% 40% of their visitors are from South Africa, 30 coming from Mozambique. They, of course, need to scale that. Zimbabwe can take a leaf out of that as well. But in order for regional partners to equally want to participate in the travel industry within our country, we too should take an active part in marketing and promoting our own country as well. So, going to destinations beyond Victoria Falls, which I think are great destinations, beyond Kariba, which I think is a fantastic destination. But you have your Chimani Manis, you have very remote areas in Blueo that have great tourism destinations, Chivu, for instance. And so all this creates an opportunity, I think, for not only opportunities in terms of business-wise, because come to think about it, Zimbabwe's bed capacity, just in terms of hospitality, is quite low, sitting at maybe 2,000, if not less, right? You want to be able to scale up, and in order to scale up, you have new travelers. More travelers means more airlines opening.
Right.
This channel.
I will take you up on the travel aspect,
Right.
but I've got to inject this. Do you think and do you feel that enough is being done to make noise about Zimbabwe's tourist destinations, both locally and beyond?
Well, listen, I think there's a serious point there, and enough cannot be done at the backdrop of the sort of international reportage we've received. Given the reporting we've received in as far as the perception, be it of the political nature or culture within the country, the polarity or the competing ideas, as it were, within a political sense, and equally, not being seen. And this is not just a Zimbabwean problem, by the way. This is a continental problem. The reportage of Africa at large for the last over 100 years, if you couldn't go further, has been richly negative. So I think not enough can be done within this short space of time. So greater investment needs to go into messaging. And I think that's why, we at the Southern African Times, we run a travel magazine that we're currently distributing called Sat Travel. And part of the agenda of that is purely to focus primarily on how do we further promote the negative reporting around Africa? How do we work against it? How do we de-campaign? Well, we do a couple of things. We tell our own stories, and that's where we intend to start.
Right, now let's talk about the travel aspect, specific, of course, to Zimbabwe. We have fascinating tourism sites. You talk about the Great Zimbabwe. It is an iconic structure in its own right. Of course, it may be dwarfed by the attention that some of the sites in Zimbabwe get in terms of their attention, but it's equally a feature that is worth talking about among several other sites that we've got in the country, in terms of making sure that all of these destinations are well linked. You mentioned the Chimanimani earlier on, and I also mentioned Gonarejo earlier on. Now, in terms of linking all of these destinations, is enough being done? If not, what can be done to ensure that they are well linked, well connected for ease of access in as far as the tourists are actually concerned?
Yeah. So I think one way to look at it is to not look at it as purely a question of whether who bears responsibility, be it policymakers or private players. I think we all bear responsibility in promoting these travel destinations, because naturally you have friends, I'm sure, who live outside the country. And have you when was the last time you spoke about these destinations, right? And that small responsibility can change whether someone travels to a destination or not. If I continuously hear negative stories about theft or crime in Johannesburg, it's a deterrent, not an invitation. So I think not only should policymakers do more, not only should private players do more in terms of injecting more greater investment, not only should media do more, but I think we all can do more.
Right. Another aspect has to do with there being a shortage of facilities in Zimbabwe. Cases in point would be when we have the trade fair in Bulawayo.
Yeah.
There is a deficit of hotel facilities, a deficit of beds, to put it across in the simplest terms possible. Mm-hmm. In terms of the investment needed to ramp that up, what could or should be done to change that particular metric?
Well, I think before we go to a macro perspective of investment, which is where you include government players and your major sort of entities, I think there's also a small role that us, the people, can play. I'll give you an example. Airbnb right? Airbnb is a facility and a concept that invites you as with your property. If you have 2 extra rooms and you know that or you have an extra property and you want to be able to house people in that property in order to make a quick buck, be it $80 a night, especially when it's a prime time for travel, you can make a considerable amount of money on the side for your family, and or if you are in the diaspora, for instance, and you have you've built up your house and you have people, you can either choose people to rent or you can actually convert it into a commercial property. So we can all be creative about these particular opportunities. But when you go into the macro side of things, of course, there is definitely need for further investment in terms of beds, hotelier spaces, ensuring that there's capacity to accommodate such a large amount of visitors. But I think what I'm learning, and what I think is critical, it's not sufficient to have good policies, nor is it sufficient to have intent to invest. We now need to stop doing the talking and start doing the work. There are great opportunities coming up, especially with Kazungula right close by, and the more development that we're getting from that very bridge itself, and also looking at the Africa Free Trade, which I think we don't talk too much about. This is a great opportunity for African businesses, especially tourism. And so it means that we have to equally relook at our visa regimes. We equally need to look at the opportunities that come in terms of widening our airspace, and also more fundamentally, which is more, I think, germane to our industry, which is messaging. We have to change the narrative.
Right, you mentioned the African Continental Free Trade Area, and I think much has been said about the potential that this trade bloc could actually unlock, and mostly you get conversations around, of course, that aspect of increasing intra-Africa trade, and of course tourism is a significant constituent of that broader umbrella. May you speak to the possibilities that could be unlocked, and perhaps what needs to be done at a policy level at the African Continental Free Trade Area, and perhaps how Zimbabwe as a player can contribute to this whole setup.
Yeah, well, Zimbabwe is already a player. We're a signatory to the agreement, and I think the first place we can start with is fostering the relations of tourism. I mean, we should be able to introduce packages that are equally regional based. We should do more in terms of our conferencing. We should also think about themes. I'll give you an example of Eswatini again. They have a cultural festival, right? Because they're big on culture. Now, we have great Zimbabwe. We have Victoria Falls, of course, we've got the Carnival, right? We can further diversify. Our destinations are vast, and they are deep with history. If you consider the fact that Great Zimbabwe's story, right? Great Zimbabwe's story has been distorted for so long, and the Zimbabwean people were not considered to be the people that actually built those bridges. There's a way of decolonizing that particular question by reversing that through insights and so forth. Now, how we leverage that? Of course, those messaging points are a commercial opportunity, especially for us in the business of messaging. Are a commercial opportunity, especially for those in hospitality areas or conferences or academics. You see, there's a few types of tourism that you have to look at. You have education as a tourism. We bark out to the world. Zimbabwe prides itself to be one of the most educated countries on the continent. That is an opportunity for tourism in itself. We should market that. Medical tourism, as you know, and business tourism. The opportunities that we have here. We should be seeing road shows not just in London and conferences in London, but we should see conferences here. We should see the Zimbabwe Development Agency actually investing in local tourism in the context of business. So all stakeholders have an opportunity here, and this includes the private sector, to further to do their part in ensuring that as we begin to leverage the Africa Free Trade, right, we can actually have a great opportunity. Because what are the issues? The issues are connectivity. We don't have connectivity. We need more people. We need more roads. We need more greater intra networks within the region and also the continent. We need more. We need to invite more air flights. I know Ethiopian Airlines has done an amazing job in trying to diversify its travel by opening up greater, destination sites as one of the largest African, airlines. But we need more to come to the party, and they've led the way in that regard. And I think those are some of the opportunities we can take. And I think at a policy level, finally, I think definitely we have to look at the visa regimes. We have to look at the culture we have in terms of our borders, and equally how they interact with visitors off of African descent. We have to equally inculcate in all our systems that this is a great commercial opportunity. And maybe as a final point, the Africa diaspora is one that is always left out. But I'll just leave a stat with you. The World Bank reported in 2019 that when you combine your FDI inflow as well as your domestic developmental aid, your developmental aid, right? It could not dwarf what Africa received through remittances from the Africa diaspora. So they too play a great role in terms of investing in their countries, because a lot of them are building anyway. Why don't we invite them through diaspora bonds to build hospitals and hotels and so forth, so that you can leverage not only their skill set as maybe experts in healthcare or hospitality and so forth, but equally leverage the investment that we receive from them in remittances, but converting it to something much more tangible, not just going from consumer, but more to investment.
Ian Farai Muvuti, thank you for joining us
Thank you for
on
having me.
The Mint. Now, time for us to take a quick breather. When we come back, we explore other regional as well as international stories. The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere.